Hello everyone, Ben here, and this video is being uploaded on Sunday the 25th of February 2018, and this is what I spent most of the morning working on, was a spreadsheet to actually accurately get the voting trends of each state, so whether they're moving more Democrat or more Republican, and by how much. That way I don't have to, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. I'm going to save that real quick. But that way I don't have to rely on terrible math. And this also gives me a much more accurate representation. For example, let's look at Alabama. The rating I would have it, that I would give it for 2024 is R plus 18, when in reality it's actually Republican plus 37 based off of the two-party share. And the way I calculated that is I took the way I can calculate all this is I take the 2,000 vote total for each party, each major party. I am ignoring third parties, that way I'm only getting the two-party vote share. Should make it relatively easy, right? So I calculate that, I get the percent of the two-party share each party gets in that state. And then, of course, I do that for every state, and I wind up getting the totals. So, in both of these elections, interestingly enough, the Democrats lost, but they won the nation as a whole. They won the popular vote, if we go by just the two-party share. 2000 was much, much closer. 2016, not so much. And then I take that, and if I look, now let's just use Alabama, for example. In 2000, it was only 15 points more Republican than the nation as a whole. And the way I figured this out was I took the absolute value of the Republican vote in Alabama minus their national vote, so I found the difference, and that's why I used absolute values. I wanted to find the difference, and then I took and I added that to the absolute value of the Democrats' version of that, so the Democrat vote total, difference between the national vote and the state vote. That way I accounted for how wide of a margin it was in the state, and let me just check to make sure I didn't have to make this as complicated as I wound up making it. So it should be about 15.75, 57.61 minus 42.39, 42.39. Okay, 15.22 is the gap between the two, but as we can see, it's more it favors the Republicans a bit more. But you can find that because guess what? The Republicans had more to gain than the Democrats had to lose. The Republicans gained just under 20. Democrats lost just under 7. So that's kind of how that works. And I did that for each and every single state, and I colored them red for more Republican and blue for more Democrat than the nation as a whole. And I did that for both 2000 and 2016. Okay? And so we found out that that states that changed how they voted between the two to the entire other party were Colorado, as you can see, Democrat in 2016, but much more Republican in 2000. We go, let's look, here's one that flipped, here's a state that flipped. Minnesota, well, same thing with Michigan actually. Michigan used to vote Democrat, now votes more Republican, or at least it did. In Minnesota, same thing, it flipped from the Democrats to the Republicans. Now, That isn't to say that the Republicans won Minnesota, because we all know they didn't. But it's showing that it's about time Minnesota is about ready to flip to the Republicans. Just like Michigan was about ready to flip to the Republicans. And this is, of course, assuming a 50-50 election with these baselines. So that if there was a 50-50 election where each party got 50% of the vote, this is about how far they would deviate from the national election. Here's a state that flipped to the Democrats, Nevada. Here's another state that flipped to the Democrats, New Mexico. Here's a state that's becoming more Democrat, North Carolina. Ohio is starting to not be as competitive. Oklahoma, we got Oregon. Oregon, one of the closest states in 2000. Now it's extremely Democrat, and actually Oregon was more Republican than the nation as a whole. By the way, if you look at Florida, ever so slightly more Republican, believe it or not. And each party essentially got 50, as we all know, 537 votes was what separated them, the two, Bush and Gore. But it's become a lot more Republican. Pennsylvania, state that flipped from Democrats to the Republicans. Surprisingly, Rhode Island has gotten a lot less Democrat. Texas, Democrats always talk about it, and it is swinging towards the Democrats. That is not in your head. It is starting to move towards the Democrats. Virginia, state that used to be very Republican, now is becoming a lot more Democrat. Look at Wisconsin. In 2000, it voted slightly more Republican, but now it voted a decent amount more Republican. So, the way I use this is, so I get the trend, and you can, look down here if you really want. You can pause and look at the difference and check my math by creating your own. Actually, I'm just kidding. I'm either tomorrow or Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, I'm gonna put this online, put it in a in a Google Doc. That way you can dig into, copy the document and dig into it and see exactly and actually see the document and play with it and figure it out and maybe project it even further than I have. I went to 2036 because at that point we're talking about long-term trends, and I don't think these trends are going to hold up that long, but I just wanted to put it up there as if the trends would last that long. Simply because it needs to be done, okay? And we find out, let's look at which states are going to flip from being Democrat to Republican. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to freeze the column. So let's look, 2020, will any states flip from one party to another in 2020? And nope, 2020 is going to have basically the same map. Well, let's go to 2024 where some things are kind of interesting. We find out that Maine as a whole is going to vote a little bit more Republican than the nation as a whole. No states really flip other than Maine, and it takes a few cycles for these trends to actually be baked in. And I'm just accidentally skipped one. Not 2024. 2028. Again, nothing really changes. A lot of states get a little bit more competitive, and we'll dig into that because I do have the maps, and I'm going to switch those in a second. A state that flips. Here we go. This would be the last time that North Carolina, if we look at this, last time North Carolina is supposed to vote Republican. This would be the last time Rhode Island is supposed to vote Democrat, surprisingly. Texas, this is the last time it would be supposed to vote Republican. And that basically means it's more Republican than the nation as a whole. So we go back. I'm going to exit out of this and take you to a map version of this. And welcome back, everybody. So now we have the map versions of that spreadsheet. Because, yeah, we needed that. We needed the map version of that spreadsheet. So in a pure 50-50 election, this is what 2020 will look like if both parties get 50% of the vote. The Republicans would likely win a fairly large majority, win by a fairly large amount in the Electoral College, even though it was a dead tie in the popular vote. So, let's move on to the next election, 2024. And this is based off of state. Ignore the electoral vote totals, simply because I can't use the gradient on the 2024 allocation. But it happens. By the way, I'm going to want to read that article. I just noticed it, so there we go. Anyway, so as we can see, Arizona, it's not moving a lot. And that's the interesting thing, is Arizona is not moving towards the Democrats as much as a lot of people would think, at least not in the long run. And I'm a little skeptical of some of that math, but at the same time, I'm not too skeptical because I've done my math and it does take into account recent demographic shifts. In 2020, I will be revising this after the election to account for the change in, to see how accurate my map was based off of how each state votes. I want to see if this method actually works. But as we can see, Midwest is moving towards the Republicans. This area is starting to move more towards, this area is starting to move a little bit, one way. So we can see starting to change up here. But this isn't all that different from the 2020 map. We do notice that New Mexico continues its trend towards the Democrats, and the upper Midwest continues its trend towards the Republicans. But nothing really changes. Nothing really changed. Nothing significant changes. But now we go to 2028. Yeah, we're going really far into the future. As we can see, Colorado and Virginia have switched. Rhode Island now only leans Democrat. Connecticut is starting to move. This area continues to move. Georgia gets much less Republican. But not really that many changes from this map, which 2020, 2024, 2028. So let's see what happens in 2032. Well, Texas now only leans Republican. These areas start getting a lot more. And the color grading I chose was, this is within 5 points of dead even. So any state that votes for a party less than 5% more than the rest of the nation will get the lightest color, like Arizona and Nevada. And like Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas in this map, these lighter colors are between 5 and 10, and darkest shade is over 10% more than the rest of the nation. Okay, so 2020, 2024, 2028, 2032. Again, no real changes, but don't worry, it's about to shift significantly. Into this. where the Democrats are now, they'd probably be favored in this map configuration, because the close states are supposed to, more close states are supposed to vote. Actually, ooh, that's a tough one. And of course, this would be the second time the electoral map changes, and we don't have any information on how many votes each state will have in 2032. How many electoral votes they'd have? Wait, I think this is 2020, 2024, 2028, 2032, 2036. This would actually be the second election since the reallocation in 2030. And as we can see, the Sun Belt continues to move towards the Democrats. The southeast corridor right here continues to move. However, the Northeast is starting to move. This area, Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, is starting to move towards the Republicans. Again, this area continues to move in their direction. So it's kind of they're trading off a little bit. And the West continues to move towards the Democrats. But they're kind of trading off in the areas in which the parties have their base and their prominence. But this is assuming trends continue as is. So we go back to 2020. Let's assume that Trump gets reelected, right? Well, if we go to 2024, this would mean the Democrats would probably have the advantage. Let's say that this actually is a 50-50 election, a pure 50-50 election, and this is what the map looks like. Well, in 2024, the Democrats would probably be favored. I'm not sure exactly by how much, but I'd say it'd be enough to win the election because you'd flip Minnesota, Wisconsin, probably Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida, and you'd probably win New Hampshire. So that would be, let me actually pull out my calculator here. And so 216 for the Democrats, and again, that's plus 11, plus 10, plus 15, plus 29, and plus 4 from New Hampshire. So 285 electoral votes. There's a chance they get more, for example, Maine's. Let's just add those, so that's 287. There would be a halfway decent chance Democrats pick up Georgia. So plus 16. So it'd be around in the 280s to 270s, right? They're in the 280s to about 300-ish would be where the Democrats would be expected to pick up. But make no mistake, the Republicans would have the advantage in this scenario, and not in this. When I say in this scenario, I mean they have the electoral college advantage. However, the Democrats should still be favored to win 2024. But if it's a 50-50 election where each candidate gets 50%, again, the Republicans would probably wind up winning. Okay, so 2028, again, assuming the Democrats win election here, I would assume the Democrats win re-election here. Probably still picking up Florida, essentially picking up the states that they picked up beforehand, and maybe adding another Rust Belt state, or maybe losing one of the Rust Belt states that they won previously. But who knows? This is one of those where if the Democrats win in 2024, I'm going to favor them in 2028. Again, the Republicans still have the Electoral College advantage. Interestingly enough, same thing here. They still have the Electoral College advantage. And after 2 terms of Democrat rule, they would probably be favored to win again. which, okay, fine, whatever. You know, they'd be favored to win the Electoral College in a dead even election. Here in 2036, if the Republicans win, I would expect them to continue to win. But this would be the first one where the Democrats aren't heavy underdogs in the Electoral College. They would certainly be, they would certainly have a more than good shot, in my opinion. They would have a more than good shot at winning the Electoral College. And it's hard to tell who would, what the parties would do, because, you know, Republicans would probably notice a shift in that Texas is no longer continuing to be solid Republican. And so what they would do is they would probably alter the way they campaign. Just like the Democrats, if they found out that the Republicans were able to stop the tide or keep it slow enough in the Sun Belt to where they continue to win elections, Democrats might try to focus back on the upper Midwest. But who knows? You know, the parties are going to start changing. You're going to see a radically different Republican-Democrat party by 2028. So this map may be completely, you know, completely inaccurate. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you understand that this is just an exercise and not, you know, an honest prediction. This is, well, it kind of is if you are taking, you know, math as an honest prediction. This is just kind of one of those things I'm going to use to base my predictions on, okay? But I'm not going to heavily factor it. For example, Arizona, even though it stays Republican, even though, say, Alaska changes, you know, it actually almost flips blue, you know, it's one of those things, you know, you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because even if you're using the most advanced model you can come up with, it's difficult to, what's the best word for this, to be 100% accurate and confident. Any state in the lighter shades, and even some of the ones in the middle shade, I would expect to still be competitive in most elections. Even though I have them, you know, in, you know, even though I may have aligned them with a certain party, you know, anything within 3, I would probably list as a true toss-up under most situations. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.